welcome to the rating case study webinar for May. Pleased to have you all here and to hear about some great projects. If we could just move to the next slide, please, Serena. Before we start anything, the IC would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I understand we're in all different parts of the country. For me, that's the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and both of these projects are on Whadjuk Noongar in Perth. We acknowledge their deep connection to land, water and culture and pay respects to elders past and present. If we could skip to the next slide, please. So just a brief agenda for today. You'll only see me for a very brief amount of time and we'll be taking to the projects. That's what you're here to see. So I'm Adam Dallas. I'm the regional lead for WA, Northern Territory and South Australia at the IC, and have been lucky enough to be the project manager for these projects as well. So we'll be hearing from Linda van Achterberg at the Public Transport Authority speaking about Morley to Ellenbrook line, which was our first and I believe still only platinum rated as-built project. It did a combination of version 2/2.1 through that project, but you'll be hearing more from her. And then also we'll be hearing from Deval Gajera at Perth Airport speaking about their experiences using the IS Essentials tool. They're actually using a pilot. It's great that we have both of these projects here today because you can see the scope and breadth of an IS rated project. Obviously one being very large with Mel, and then an Essentials project coming through Perth Airport as well. So I think that's probably about it from me at the start, and we might throw across to Linda, but there will be the opportunity for question and answers following these two presentations. So please, throughout the presentation, if you could pop those questions you have into the Q&A function, you'll see a widget at the top for that, so you can enter it through there. I can see the questions. I don't think the wider group can see them, but we'll be getting them and filtering them through, and I'll be running that Q&A after. But Linda, over to you. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I'm immensely proud to be presenting on the Morley Ellenbrook line today. And as Adam already mentioned, we call it MEL for short. It's a very affectionate term. MEL's incredible sustainability achievements really redefined what is possible, and it's reshaping the way we implement sustainability across our own organization and projects. As I take you on the short journey through the project, it's timely to remember that we are building infrastructure along transport routes that have existed for thousands of years. So with that in mind, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. MEL's journey began with its origins as part of the Metronet program. The Metronet program was the single largest investment in public transport infrastructure in Western Australian history. The program added 72 kilometres of rail and 23 new stations. The MEL project connects the city of Perth to the suburb of Ellenbrook towards the northeast. Metronet's vision was to create a legacy beyond the new infrastructure, and to do that, they developed a comprehensive sustainability strategy supporting three key pillars: economy, environment, and people and place. This strategy started planting the seeds for the project's future success. So a little bit about MEL itself. MEL constructed 21 kilometres of new rail and 5 new stations. The project was delivered as an alliance form of contract between the Public Transport Authority, PTA, so that's who I work for, and the contractor was Laing O'Rourke. This alliance structure proved to be very fertile ground for great sustainability outcomes, which I'll be highlighting. Let's start with some innovations. So over the just over 4 years that the project took from contract award to opening, we had some pretty cool things. Inspired by household swimming pools, MEL pioneered the use of construction dam covers made locally from 30% recycled content. This was a low-cost, effective way to minimize water loss through evaporation. Second thing that we did, the project also used a hybrid solar system to power its Whiteman Park site office. This combines solar PV with a battery and a backup generator. This system powered site accommodations, storing excess solar energy in batteries for use overnight or during cloudy periods. This system ended up outperforming expectations, not only drawing most of its power from the sun, but also leaving the site blissfully free of generator noise and diesel fumes in the day. MEL was also the first installation of electric vehicle chargers in station car parks in Western Australia. Each of the 5 stations now has 10 EV charging bays. EV charging was actually not in the initial contract, so we had to be careful to scope them, and we spent a lot of time looking at how to maximize the number of EV charging bays while staying within the capacity of the electrical infrastructure. This also required collaboration between PTA and the contractor to establish how these would actually work in practice, since they were a first for the PTA. However, these initiatives don't really tell the full story of what made MEL so special. Some hints of MEL's underlying strength can be found in its life cycle impact performance. The project not only met, but far exceeded its contractual targets for water and energy. We put solar PV on every station, something that was also not part of the original contract. And it's a reminder that variations like these need both parties to come to the table. The material target seemed at risk at design stage, but MEL ultimately exceeded it. This was primarily through procuring low carbon concrete and steel. So where projects often lose traction in actually delivering design ambitions, MEL instead shifted into high gear during construction. And I think this principle is best exemplified by our sustainability rating performance. So 2 out of the 5 stations were Green Star certified, and both exceeded their contractual requirements, once again picking up pace in construction. Both stations scored the highest points to date for any railway station in Australia. And then the feather in our cap, our IS rating, where we went from silver contractual requirement to a gold in design, to a momentous platinum in as-built. And as Adam alluded to, and I'm going to top him a little bit, to put it in scale, no other project in Australia has achieved even a gold in as-built in version 2.1. And with MEL receiving platinum, the project skipped a whole level. So it really stands head and shoulders above the rest. So in hindsight, when you look at the path that we took to get to platinum, it almost seems inevitable, like it was destiny. But I would like to say the rating didn't create the project's success. The project's success created the rating. But the question I ask myself often is, what made it happen? What made the project excel across all metrics? What made it pick up pace and become a really strong closer? And to illustrate how I think we did that, I'm going to run you through 2 stories to try and help shed some light. So the first is the quarterly reporting, which showcases the strong governance and processes that the project was built on. Here are some extracts from the Metronet quarterly reporting template. The project reported on various metrics, including material, water, and energy use. Performance was tracked using red, amber, green indicators against key Metronet focus areas. This reporting was a great step, but colored dots without a mechanism for enforcement is worth about as much as a box of Smarties spilled on a page. So projects normally have built-in governance, with each discipline reporting up, and at each level things get prioritized before escalating further up the chain. It's here where sustainability often gets lost, losing out to schedule and cost issues. So the Metronet project had this project governance, but also an entirely separate governance stream for sustainability. The contractors provided quarterly sustainability reports to my team at the PTA. We reviewed and collated the information, presenting these to our project directors for sign-off. We then presented these to our managing director and our COO for their sign-off once again. This was then passed to the Metronet Steering Committee, which included the Metronet Managing Director and the Director General for Transport. Finally, a report on sustainability performance was provided to the WA Minister of Transport. In short, everyone along the chain knew who was watching, and they acted accordingly. What's also important to note was that although higher levels of government were watching us, they never prescribed to the PTA how to tackle challenges. They left it up to the PTA to use their project delivery expertise to take the most context-appropriate actions. They would only say fix it without attempting to prescribe how to fix it. As an add-on, the reporting was also reviewed by the Metronet team, providing an extra set of eyes. The combined PTA and Metronet comments went back to the contractor for the next reporting period to assure quality. And outside of this Metronet level governance, we also had a very effective internal PTI structure. My team had monthly meetings with our project directors, and they addressed any issues very proactively with the alliance manager. So this meant that issues very, very rarely made it to the quarterly reports. What's more is that our PTI sustainability team worked really closely with the contractor sustainability team, and we often had a united front when engaging with our respective project leaders. This means we often tackle problems together, working on pooling the levers available to each of us to get to the desired overall outcome. One such example of all of this in practice is the implementation of food organics, garden organics in landscaping. You think it would be straightforward to incorporate some FOGO, a soil conditioner, but trust me, it was one of our biggest challenges. So this is a story of FOGO. So MEL's contract did not include requirements for the use of FOGO. However, the WA Waste Authority and our Director General for Transport set targets for PTA to use FOGO. The only way to achieve these targets was to implement in landscaping on current projects, putting us in a bit of a pickle because we hadn't asked for it initially. So PTA started engaging with the MEL project and suppliers, where we started running into some hiccups. Our landscaping is filled with native plants, and it was claimed that FOGO results in high phosphorus content, which is damaging to native plants. FOGO use was not specifically included in the PTA specifications, which led to more uncertainty. PTA had multiple conversations to try and resolve these issues, with no luck, and the green text on these slides show where PTA and the broader government put in effort. So seeing these obstacles, the Director General for Transport set up and chaired tri-monthly meetings with PTA asset managers and our project directors to encourage the use of recycled materials, of which FOGO was one. As a result of these discussions and buy-in from PTA, our specifications were updated. And if you haven't noticed by now, the ups and downs shown on this graph reflect the sustainability team's collective mood. Here we were on a high, thinking that the specific inclusion of FOGO in our specifications would reduce the perceived risk and allow its implementation. But oh boy, how wrong we were. Despite the PTA specifications updates, the project's internal PTA landscaping project engineer kept raising the risk of high phosphorus, requiring some further convincing by our PTA sustainability team. The landscaping subcontract was due out for procurement, but the construction teams had not included FOGO. So the contractor sustainability team flagged this to us as a risk, and between us and ourselves, we intervened with some meetings. As you can see, the purple text shows where the contractor put in effort to get this over the line as well. So eventually, we settled on including FOGO as an option in the procurement. The bad news was that only one subcontractor ended up pricing for FOGO, which is never a good thing in the world of construction. So luckily, the contractor proceeded with using this subcontractor. Yet we kept getting strong resistance from the landscape consultants who still didn't want to implement it. So exasperated as to why this implementing FOGO was so hard, PTI senior leadership called for a FOGO Mythbuster event. We called on contractors, consultants, and suppliers across all our projects to attend. The event aimed to dispel myths and make client intentions very clear. But it didn't succeed. I still have emails in my inbox passed on from our contractor sustainability counterparts asking for our assistance, because their consultants kept saying, and I quote, "The myth-busting session actually demonstrated that the product is not suitable for native planting," and then goes on to say, "There currently is no actual proven scientific data demonstrating its successful use with native planting to date." We kept at it, putting pressure from both the PTA and contractor side. PTA added KRA monetary incentives for the use of FOGO in landscaping, and the contractor partnered with their subcontractor to engage a soil scientist to undertake scientific trials. This trial sought to establish the optimum soil blend for the use of FOGO. The outcomes of the trial showed that an 80-20 blend, that is 20% FOGO, was the optimum mix, being better for plant health than no FOGO. In the end, through consistent work collaboration and effort across client and contractor teams, we implemented the use of FOGO in landscaping at all of five stations. What's more, we subsequently used FOGO on 2 more Metronet projects, and this time there was no resistance, hardly any issues. So through hard graft and grit, Mel had paved the way for the use of FOGO. So on the left are pictures of the trial area in early 2024, where we tested 4 different blends of FOGO. We rolled out the 80-20 blend because it proved to be the best, using nearly 1,000 tons of FOGO in the process. On the right are pictures of the landscaping earlier this year, is in the peak of Perth's unrelenting summer. So the plants are thriving. So I feel like this FOGO story kind of tells the tale of what made Mel so special. It was client, contractors, subcontractors and suppliers all working together and persevering when things got hard. And luckily we had the resources and support to do so. So if I go back to my original question, what made our great outcomes happen? What made the project excel across all metrics? What made it pick up pace and become a strong closer? So I've made an attempt at synthesizing the pillars that led to Mel's success. The first pillar is governance. Mel enjoyed strong governance through its alliance structure, as well as PTA's inherent rail project assurance due to the requirements of rail safety national law. This was bolstered by the addition of Metronet's strong governance. The dedicated sustainability reporting pathways ensured that sustainability did not get drowned out. Mel had specific measurable contract clauses that set out the roles, deliverables, and reporting required. This ensured that the minimum expectation was clearly set out from the very beginning. This high level of requirements in the contracts probably helped contribute to everybody having sufficient resources. So Mel had dedicated internal sustainability resources across both the client and contractor teams, and we had continuity with the same teams working over the life of the project. We also had a very strong collaborative culture, as the FOGO example showcased. And then the holy grail of sustainability, ensuring it's all integrated during design stage and disciplines. Mel did pretty well in this. We didn't miss out on any opportunities because it was too late. From the client side, we had very good buy-in from our PTA technical discipline leads and asset managers, which was invaluable in getting the technical go-ahead for some of these initiatives. I would add that overall, Mel still relied on individuals rather than sustainability being truly integrated. Luckily for Mel, the individuals that did have the buy-in also had the decision-making power. So we are kind of now looking at how to better integrate sustainability in processes and projects going forward. As mentioned before, we had good reporting, but reporting was also visible. Mel had escalation pathways and senior leadership responded if things were going off track, as the FOGO example illustrates, and this was key. Mel had a strong culture and leadership from the top. There was strong messaging about sustainability from both the client and the contractor. There was high-level government interest in the sustainability outcomes, and this ensured that sustainability remained a priority. But we even kept improving over the project's life. It was only later in the project that the contractor's sustainability lead was included in the alliance management team. This made sure that sustainability was not only seen to be an important discipline, it also allowed decisions to include sustainability inputs. The initial contract also had no monetary incentives for sustainability outcomes. As client, we decided to include these late in the project to ensure that initiatives like FOGO and strong sustainability rating performance was incentivized to actually be delivered. So putting all of these together was trust. On Mel, we had a high level of trust and genuine collaboration. As client, we had this internally within the PTA and project leadership. We also had a very strong relationship with the contractor sustainability team. We were all very open and honest with our challenges, which meant that we could tackle them together. In summary, it wasn't a single lever or a silver bullet that led to Mel's outstanding outcomes. Mel's success was due to a system of many moving parts, some engineered through contracts and governance. But the real difference at Mel was much more human. It was the strength of its people and the clarity of its leadership. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Linda. I might get you to take over the slides again, Serena, and we can throw to Deval. Before we do that, can I just remind everyone that there is the Q&A function available here. I don't think I've seen any questions come through at the moment. I've got a couple that I know I could pepper Linda with, but I think it's going to be more valuable if it's coming from the participants more so than me. But I guess without too much further ado, I might pass across to Deval, who's the Sustainability Manager at Perth Airport, to speak about their experience using the Essentials tool on a Perth Airport project. Thanks, Deval.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Linda. Hey, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the IS Essentials design writing at Perth Airport for the project Aviation Support Precinct Stage 1 and T2 Apron Expansion. Just before I start, I would like to acknowledge Whadjuk people of Noongar Nation, on which I'm sitting, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. We can move on to the next one. So agenda for today, I'm gonna touch base on the project introduction, very high level, and then we'll move on to what we have delivered, how we have delivered. I'll also talk about some of the outcomes from targeting IS Essentials rating and some of the benefits that we have seen, not just at the project level, but also at the wider level within the business. We'll also highlight some of the key challenges from adopting the pilot version of the IS Essentials rating, and how we are learning from our experience using the rating tool and making some of the processes as a standard process within our business. Moving on to the next one. So introduction, the project is made up of two packages. First one is the Aviation Support Precinct Stage 1, and the second one is the Terminal 2 Apron Expansion Stage 1 and 2. So both of these packages are within one rating. As you can see in the image, the project is located within the Airport Central Precinct, next to the Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. This is supporting Papel's major transformation, consolidating all of the major commercial airline services into the unified Airport Central Precinct, which will result in an enhancement of the efficiency, cost, and improving the passenger experience. We had a strong focus on delivering sustainable aviation infrastructure, and the notable initiative that we have taken as a result of this project is we have targeted the IS Essentials design rating, the pilot version of the design rating. If we can move on to the next one. So Aviation Support Precinct will house the essential services like in-flight catering, aircraft and equipment maintenance and freight facilities. It's spread across around 33 hectares in 33 hectares of area. It's got two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. The focus for this project is only limited to stage 1. However, we are also working on stage 2 at the moment, and we just finished the design for that. The stage 1 also includes the gatehouse, which provides connection between the airside and landside. It is also close to T1 and T2, as I mentioned, and yeah, it just allows us smooth access between the airside and landside, allowing some of the critical services for the aviation precinct. We can move on to the next one. T2 apron expansion, which is adjacent to ASP stage 1. It looks at an expansion of the current terminal 2 aprons, just boosting the aircraft parking capacity, allowing the growing demand from the regional and resource-based charter operations. As a result of this project, we will see the increase of 13% in the aircraft parking capacity, and the project mainly includes the flexible payment across around 90,000 square meter. There's some minor scope also includes flood lighting and the center line lighting for the taxi lines. Next one. So going to touch base on the delivery a little bit. So the project has targeted IS Essentials design rating with a target of bronze. We have targeted around 11 credits for this project. As most of you would be aware, the IS Essentials allow for screening out some of the credits which are not material enough. So we have undertaken a materiality assessment, identified some of the credits which would be medium or high in terms of materiality, and we have screened out some of the credits which would be sitting at low and very low. That helps us allocating the points into the credits which are more material. So the projects can achieve the rating without much of an effort, similar to contrary to what you would see in typical full ICE score rating. So we have targeted LEA1 and LEA2 leadership credits. We have also targeted climate change and resilience. We have looked at targeting level 1 for ECN1 credit. And then rest of the credits were focusing on the resource efficiency. So we looked at carbon emissions, renewable energy, resource efficiency, resource outcomes, resource outputs, and the inputs, and water efficiency and water management. If we move on to the next one, so the project is owned by the Perth Airport. Our delivery partner included GHD. So the GHD has done design work and helped us with the design rating. The West Coast Civil are the contractors working on the project. We have just finished with the construction, so we're working through the as-built rating at the moment. Targeting the essentials rating gave us a strong and systematic method for embedding sustainability throughout the project lifecycle. The tool has a structured framework, as I mentioned previously, which allow us to target sustainability outcomes which are material enough for the project. We have considered the essentials rating from the outset of the project. It was included within the design contract, as we have commenced with the schematic design and the detailed design. It allowed us to focus on the aspects such as resource use, carbon emissions, water efficiency, and making sure that wider sustainability practices are embedded within the project's overall delivery. We move on to the next one. So some of the key outcomes and the benefits. We looked at the resilience in particular for this project, given that it's quite critical for the Perth Airport, especially because this project is located within the airport central precinct, which is where we have most of our airline operations operating. So we have demonstrated the proactive approach in managing the climate risks under Res 1 credit by reviewing some of the past climate events and also looking at some of the existing climate models to identify the potential risks to the asset's resilience during its operational lifetime throughout until 2090. We also identified the mitigation measures through the multidisciplinary workshops with the design team, with the Purpose project team, and those were specifically for the high and above risks that we have identified during the workshop. Some of those initiatives have helped us with regards to the operational viability, safeguarding, and making sure that the infrastructure is future-proof against the emerging climate-related events and enhancing the airport's long-term operational stability. We also looked at the resource use. We have developed a comprehensive resource efficiency strategy, which was developed to enhance sustainability practices under the credits such as ISO 1, ISO 4, and ISO 6. This strategy has also focused on maximizing the resource efficiency during the construction by reviewing the existing practices and identifying the new opportunities. As I mentioned previously, we have targeted an ECN1 credit, which looked at the multi-criteria assessment and the rapid cost benefit analysis, through which we have identified a few opportunities, which I'll touch base on in a bit more detail, but they included the things around resource efficiency, water management, and energy and carbon. We have also looked at the efficiency and the opportunity during the construction once we finish with the design. While today's focus is mainly around the design rating, I'll also touch base a bit on how those opportunities have helped us with achieving the levels that we were aiming for. If we move on to the next one. So looking at the energy and carbon, the project has implemented off-grid site facilities, as you can see in the image. So there are five site offices within the project boundary, and 3 of them are off-grid. They are specifically provided by the company called Triodia, who are the supply nation and Australian-owned certified indigenous business. So on the one hand, we have reduced the amount of emissions during the construction, but also at the same time, we have considered the social aspect of that as well. These site offices are solar powered and connected by a battery. And as you can see, I'm sorry, move on to the previous one. So that has resulted in roughly around 300 tons of carbon emissions, which are significant for the size of the project. If you look at the life cycle energy reduction, the additional opportunities also include the reduction of the asphalt pavement, while making sure that we still achieve the strength performance as per the project brief. We have also looked at motion sensors for gatehouse lighting and avoiding demolition of the pavements as much as we can, which altogether have helped us reduce the carbon emissions by roughly around 20%. And you can see that across different scopes in the chart shown. In the long term, this asset will transition, will also be within the purple net zero boundary, which means that the energy used during operations will be eventually decarbonized in line with the Perth Airport's net zero 2040 targets. If we move on to the next one, talking about the resource efficiency and the materials, the initial design as per the project requirement was to have asphalt wearing cores of 120 millimeter through the value engineering process, and we have identified an opportunity to reduce that by 60%, given that the asphalt carbon emissions are higher compared to other layers of the pavement. We have achieved the similar strength as per the requirement, but we reduced the thickness of the asphalt, which had resulted in roughly around 8,000 tons of carbon emission, 8,000 tons of asphalt and 500 tons of emissions. Move on to the next one. The few additional ones include removing the existing asphalt. So the current apron is suitable for these smaller planes. So what we have done is removed some of the asphalt and stabilized and strengthened the existing pavement, and then rebuilt the pavement again rather than building it from scratch. That has helped us reducing some of the raw material use quite significantly, which helped us reducing the carbon emissions by 240 tons. So if we move on to the next one, overall embodied carbon reduction, we have achieved 15% reduction, and we have achieved level 1 for the design rating for the resource credit. The project has achieved the design rating with, if I vaguely remember, if it's 28 points for the design rating, and we have achieved a bronze rating. The project has just finished the construction, and we are putting together submissions for the as-built rating, and we are on track to achieve the as-built as well. Talking about some of the key impacts, onto the next slide. To the next one. So the successful implementation of the IS essentials within the project has set a new benchmark for us, demonstrating how airports can also proactively integrate sustainability and challenge some of the requirements within the strict regulated environment, and while achieving the outcomes, positive outcomes in terms of this overall sustainability and environmental goals. We have also closely worked with our partners, GHD and Vesco Civil, our contractors. Embedding IS Essentials requirement within the contractor's scope has also helped them improve and enhance their processes as well. That significantly enhance the capability of both Perth Airport, but also the contractor. Some of the future impact will include for Perth Airport especially is looking at some of the policies and practices and see how we can better align with the IS framework so that we the initiatives that we targeting align to not just the airport standard, but also helping us meet our sustainability targets. Through the effective resource management, water conservation, energy efficiency, and resilience design, this project creates a lasting value by delivering the tangible benefits for the communities and the environment. Moving on to the key challenges. Some of the key challenges that we faced include the performance requirement of the aviation standard, but also meeting the sustainability goals. So we did set a reasonable target for the project, and then through the process during the design and making sure that we still achieve the performance outcome that we would like to achieve, we ended up achieving the bronze rating and some reasonable reduction into the carbon emissions and the resource use. Adopting the IS Essentials also has triggered a review and adaptation of the technical standards that we've got, and we are currently looking at some of our design technical requirements and see how we can better align with the IS rating, including the reporting and the minimums and the specifications for the concrete, steel, asphalt, and things like that. Given that this was the first IS Essentials project for the Perth Airport, we have also we also seen some of the new challenges as we have delivered this project, and one of that was I was making sure that the contract language especially during the construction is need to be refined. This project has helped us in identifying some of the gaps in our contracts, and we are also working towards improving them and making sure there is a standard practice across all the projects that we deliver. We have also done thorough monitoring and performance tracking on this project. It was a bit of a learning piece for us as well. Initially, the reporting that we were having was not quite detailed as we would expect, but eventually we work with the contractor and make sure that the overall reporting that we have is aligning with the IS Essentials requirement, which would eventually help us with the as-built rating. Finally, the things that we have learned with applying the tool will help us overall improving our practices and making sure that we can deliver the future projects with even more better processes. Moving on to the next steps. So yeah, what's next for the Perth Airport? As you can see in the image, we've got multiple projects happening within the airport central precinct supporting our consolidation. So for all of our projects, we have a requirement to implement sustainability data, and for the major projects, we are also targeting the rating cycle Green Star or IS. We are well underway in the delivery of the most of our projects and are aligning our methods to the streamlining processes, educating across the portfolio, and deliver the consistent outcomes. We will also continue to leverage the IS tool for the stakeholder engagement, bring the airline partners and tenants along with the journey to reduce emissions. Also looking at EVs, green electricity, SAF, etc., and looking at the risk and opportunities framework from the IS and applying it to the wider portfolio, changing the BAU, smart innovative solutions, and yeah, so on. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, as I mentioned, the project is now completed. We are working on the as-built rating, and we should have I guess around the final verification outcome in next few months. Thank you.
Thanks, Deval. I'll throw across two questions now. I'm going to bounce between one for Linda and one for Deval because there's been plenty come in, which has been great. So thanks everyone for participating. We do have the possibility to run a little long as well. So I know this has got a finish time of 12:45, where I am anyway. We can extend it an additional 5 minutes. So I'll do the first one is to Linda from Andrew, who was curious if the PTA tracked the cost of sustainability outcomes achieved on the MEL project. He's posited that a lot of the initiatives like FOGO and solar seem to be quite easy to isolate, so then you can track, I guess, the dollar savings from them.
I guess in theory you could track them because they were often variations, so they would obviously have had a monetary things attached. And yeah, we had a couple of initiatives that costed a bit of money, but like the FOGO was only in the KRAs. We didn't pay more for it, but no, we didn't track it specifically. But yeah, it would be a couple of million, but on a big 1.5 whatever billion project, it's not that big a deal considering the outcomes that you achieve.
Next one's for you, Deval, and I'm going to have a couple of questions within this one. So everyone's very interested about the asphalt, so we've got some questions coming in there. I'll just address, first of all, there's some questions about the base case and how it's being applied and measured there. The project used the light credit, if I'm not incorrect, Deval, so you weren't comparing to a base case, so they didn't have to do that. They're just looking at for opportunities for reductions, not comparing to the base case. So that's going to answer some of the questions there. But the ones that I guess you could speak to is, does the reduced thickness of asphalt layer have the same expected life and maintenance requirements? And also, had you considered applying a light coloured coating to the asphalt to reduce the urban heat and potentially prolong its lifespan?
Good question regarding asphalt. So in terms of the strength, we still achieved the same strength as we were expecting. Reducing the asphalt means that we would need to compensate it with probably thicker layer of base and sub base. So yes, we have done that. In terms of the maintenance, I need to probably check with the team to see how it has went, but it generally falls within our regular maintenance program as well. So anything around maintenance would fall into that, and then it will be looked after our operations team. The second one around the light color, unfortunately we hadn't looked at it, but it's a really good point because thermal mapping and heat island effect is an increasing focus for us, especially the consolidation. We are putting in a lot of concrete and the steel and the asphalt within the central precinct with the new car park, new roads, the precinct, the new terminal and new runway, and which is why we are also making sure that heat island effect is priority for us for all of those projects.
And was there extra testing that had to require for the reduced thickness in asphalt there, or was there any additional processes you required?
No, it was a design change. There wasn't any additional testing required, and it's given that it was for the apron and not for the taxiway and the runway. It's not considered as critical in terms of the operations as well, because the apron that we build is more to support the aviation activities and aircraft parking and things like that.
Thanks, Linda. The next one's for you from Melinda, who was wondering about, you mentioned the low carbon concrete and steel that was used.
Mm-hmm.
If able, could you provide more detail on the steel that was used, and then also PTA, or I guess in this case the contractor's definition of low carbon steel, as well as where it was sourced from? I also have a bit of a disclaimer maybe for Linda. Linda is the client in this as well, so some of the questions would be better directed towards the contractor and maybe some of the designers, so we can address some of these offline, but maybe you can have a chance first, Linda, and if it's a you don't know, then yeah, just say.
Yeah, I can speak for all the projects, maybe not MEL specifically, but we on a following project, we had a very similar thing with the low carbon steel, so I can talk about that. So it usually comes in the rebar, so not the structural steel. So we can have there's a supplier in Perth that's very commonly used, Infrabold, I'll use the name. And then they're usually very reliable, and we can get some lower carbon steel. So I guess by lower carbon is why I didn't put low carbon, because what's the definition of low carbon? I said lower carbon. So we can often source lower carbon steel through Bestbar, who procures from Nat Steel. So that's from Singapore. So yeah, we often divided packages to try and optimize the way that we use the steel, because the best power supply was not as reliable, and for these projects you kind of need, there's a critical path, so you can't really mess with the schedule. So we split the packages to the ones that are the higher carbon, but we needed it to be on site on time. We would use the higher carbon steel because that was the only one that would kind of work, but then we would split the package for the lower carbon rebar to the ones where the packages where you didn't need it to be exactly on time. So I don't know if that answers the question. So yeah, we don't have an exact value for what is low or lower carbon, but it's just lower than basically the baseline, and we try to go as low as we can.
Thanks. I might send one more question to each of you, and then we can close it out. Again, for Deval, this one is, we had similar questions coming in from Priya, Ben, and Andrew, so I'll feed them to you that way. Andrew was wondering what was the capex for the project. Ben was wondering what drove Perth Airport to register for an IS Essentials rating, and then I guess finally the one that sits over that from Priya is, how did you decide on a bronze rating? Was there like a analysis of cost versus life cycle benefits, as opposed to setting a higher award level there?
Okay. In terms of the capex for the project, I did mention about the different packages of the project. So ASP stage 1 and T2 stage 1, that's what we were going for the bronze rating initially. I think from a memory that was roughly around $30 million altogether in terms of the construction cost. And then we have added up T2 stage 2 as well. And I think at the end of the day, the total project value was $50 million. And there was all under one IS rating for, at least for the design. It's been split out for the as-built. With regards to what motivated us, that's probably the question before I started, because we have been targeting this project. We have been working on these projects before then, but it was just a curiosity. We have been at that point in time, we have been working on the Airport Central consolidation major development plans, and this is, I believe, is one of the projects emerging from that. So we were already targeting IS rating for the runway and the multi-story car park that is currently under construction. And at the same time, we also came across the IS Essentials pilot rating, and one of our design managers who is quite driven around sustainability. He explored that with I guess with GHD, and that's how we ended up targeting IS Essentials rating. We didn't set a target for the rating initially. That something was developed in the early design phase, and I believe after coordination with GHD, we have set a target for bronze just to start with, and the reason behind that was because also the multi-story car park that we are currently building is also targeting bronze rating. So at that point in time, business was comfortable to set a bronze rating target for this project.
Right, thanks. And finally, I'll go back to you, Linda. This one's coming in from Luke. So on Mel, where did most of the improvements come from between design and as-built? I guess I could also help answering some of that in terms of scores for credits, but maybe Luke's discussing the initiatives that maybe were finalized or actualized in as-built.
I guess I don't know if you're talking about specific credits, because I don't know
I can speak to the credits if you want to speak to the other ones. Yeah,
the initiatives, I think we had some. So FOGO was a big one, as I said, the solar. So these were all kind of in design, but they weren't really there. For materials, it was the lower carbon steel, lower carbon concrete. We also used crush recycle concrete, which was a big thing for us because we hadn't really used crush recycle concrete in our assets before, and we used it in car parks. So that also came in at construction stage. So those were, I think, the key headline initiatives that I would say was kind of in construction that we actually delivered. Is Adam frozen?
Sorry, I was frozen. Did you answer? I can.
You can speak to the
Apologies.
credits if you have.
There we go. Yeah, I can speak to the credit. So a lot of that between design and as-built came from some uplift in some of the resourcing credits. So it's increased across Watt 1, Watt 2, and RSO 6. So there was a pretty significant increase in terms of percentage reduction and by way of that points. As well as that, there was only, I think, half of the innovations were verified in design, and then they ended with, I think, 9 points. So an additional 4 or 5 points related to innovations were finalized in the as-built stage. And then just some of the credits had some uplift through there as well. So attempting level 3, but only verified in level 2 in design, and then verified in level 3 throughout the as-built phase. So kind of finalizing some of those comments and addressing what the verifiers were looking for, both at the design and then at the as-built stage for there, and then just some general uplift across there. But I think we haven't had any new questions come in. We couldn't answer all the questions anyway, but thanks to everyone that stuck around for a bit longer, and a special thank you to Linda and Deval for sharing those stories and your experiences on the project, as well as using the IS rating. It's really appreciated that you can kind of give back to the broader community, which is incredibly helpful. I'll also just mention that the next webinar in this series will be on the 13th of August, and that will be focused on New Zealand projects from there, is what I believe. So we couldn't be more geographically opposite in terms of where IS is covered, but it's good to see that it's spread far and wide across ANZ. So I think that's a wrap for us today, and I'd really like to thank everyone for their time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.